Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unbiased America Live. My name is Will Riccadella. As you see, I'm the only one that has a decal and looks somewhat professional. Although also we have Kevin Ryan there in the middle who has Ron Swanson in the background drinking scotch by a fireplace. Ron Swanson will actually give Kevin a little bit of credibility. Credibility he so craves and doesn't really deserve. We also have all the way over there to the left where Grant just actually got his decal up. He just figured it out.
More professional than Will.
We have Grant Phillips from We Are Capitalists and the Modern Libertarian, and we have also with us the Red Eye star, Matt Palumbo, who is sitting there. You can't really see because his lighting is so god-awful. And up there he goes, and he's gone, as he should be. Thank goodness he's gone, right, guys? Welcome to the best show that no one ever watches. All right, now I want to start off. There's so much to talk about today. I kind of wanted to start off with the gorilla, but you guys wouldn't let me. So I want to go to Grant.
He was attacked by Cecil the Lion in that.
Yes, I heard it. That's very upsetting to me, and we could probably do a whole show on that. But I want to get to Grant's ugly mug because I know how much he loves guns, and I want to talk about this claim that I see all over the news. I see it everywhere. This assault weapon thing. Isn't it true if I take my frying pan and I chase Matt around with it like I should because he deserves it, that would make it an assault frying pan and an assault weapon?
I mean, we should probably ban frying pans pretty soon.
Right.
What's important to understand is an assault weapon is a military-issued weapon, meaning it's a fully automatic weapon, or it has burst fire, and that's not really what is readily available in the civilian market. That's not an AR-15, which, by the way, I'm hearing was not the gun actually used in the unfortunate shooting. What was used was an AR-15, which is what we have right here. So this is a civilian issue AR-15.
Paintball gun, right?
Yeah, paintball gun. Yep. It is a semi-automatic rifle, meaning.
Hold on one second. Stop right there. Can you tell us what a semi-automatic rifle is? Does that mean I have to squeeze the trigger each time to get a round off, or is it I hold it down?
So every time I pull this trigger, a round will fire, and the casing will eject, and then it will chamber another round.
Okay, so you have to pull the trigger each time.
Say, like Alan Grayson saying that you can fire, 700 rounds in a minute? That's physically impossible, and you would probably break your hand.
Yeah. If you fire 700 in a minute, how many bullets would it have to hold? Like, it would be insane.
It would basically have to be a fully automatic weapon that you just held down the trigger for however amount of time.
What are the gun laws down in Florida? Do you know? Oh, you do.
I do know. I'm fairly familiar with the laws. They're very similar to the laws here in Pennsylvania. I'm from Florida. Basically, to buy an AR-15 rifle just like this, which I purchased, you have to not be a convicted felon, can't be convicted of domestic violence, can never have been dishonorably discharged from the military, can't be a felon, or can't be a fugitive from justice, obviously. You have to be an American citizen, and you have to be the real purchaser of the firearm. If you buy a firearm and you are not the person who is going to be the end user, you're breaking federal law. The person in this case, he was actually a registered security guard at a DHS contracting company. So by current law, the way he purchased an AR-15 was completely 100% legal. But the issue that I take with it is, if I go to purchase an AR-15 and my intent is not as his was, which I, from what I'm understanding of him kind of becoming radicalized over a period of time, I don't think he bought it with the intent of killing people. I think he bought it and then had it and went crazy.
Didn't they say he just bought it a couple days ago before he?
I heard that he had owned it for a while. I heard that he owned it for at least a year.
Let me ask you this, Grant, on guns. So the difference between the semi-automatic rifle, the AR-15, and a semi-automatic pistol is the amount of rounds that it holds and the accuracy, correct? That's the only difference.
Well, the power.
I can buy a pistol mag that holds just as much as a standard capacity AR mag, 30 rounds. I can buy a pistol mag that holds 100 rounds.
Okay. So that's no different. You can legitimately buy a semi-automatic pistol with a higher caliber, with more rounds too.
Well, when you talk about caliber, that you can buy a pistol that is technically more powerful than an AR-15.
Right.
stopping power.
A Desert Eagle, a Colt 45. Yeah.
22 round, 22 caliber round, so it's not actually very high power. It's banned from hunting most game. Can't hunt most game with it.
It went off, Grant.
There are pistols that are much higher caliber. This shoots up. I mean, I have handguns that are more higher caliber than.
So what the left is really up in arms over is how it looks. Correct me if I'm wrong. It just looks more scary than say a handgun. It's about this looks scary. Let's ban it.
Yeah, it's an appearance issue.
All right. No, you know what? I posted one time showing a pistol with a bunch of attachments that essentially made it into something that looked like an assault rifle.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, what's the difference? And I actually got berated by people saying there's a big difference. You know, there's the way that it operates once you add all these attachments is totally different, and it does become a different weapon. Were they wrong, or what's going on here?
You're both
Kevin,
wrong.
I think the reason you got criticized is because it's clearly not unbiased.
It was a racist post.
Go ahead, Grant.
Here's the difference.
It's also racist and sexist.
Grant, your sound just went off.
This is where a round ejects out of an AR-15. There's a channel of gas that when you fire a round comes up here and pushes this bolt open and a round comes out, right? A handgun uses the actual explosion of the round to eject and then rechamber a round. It's semi-automatic.
Your sound just went off.
Yeah, I got it. Well, when you see a handgun in a rifle style, they make these frames for a handgun. You can actually a Glock into. This is really annoying. Yeah, you can actually fit a Glock into this frame, and it will fire a handgun round out of it. The thing is, if you do that, you're violating a federal law called the National Firearms Act, and you actually have to apply to the ATF to register your handgun as a short-barreled rifle, pay $200, wait 4 or 5 months, and then you can legally put your Glock handgun into this frame that allows you to shoulder it and fire it. Because technically, when you're firing that handgun in that manner, you're firing it like a rifle. You're shouldering it. So you're violating a federal law which says a non-NFA, a non-Class 3 rifle has a barrel of at least 16 inches long, and did not have a 16-inch barrel.
I have a couple of things I want to say, because it's a lot different in Connecticut. Obviously, we had the Sandy Hook shooting where the 20 kids were killed. Even before that, we had very strict firearm laws. But after that, they enacted some of the strictest in the nation. I can't buy an AR-15 in Connecticut. I mean, we have a so-called assault weapons ban up here. And what we also have is they've closed the so-called gun show loophole up here, because to make a transfer from one private gun owner to another, you actually have to bring the firearm to an FFL, which is what does that stand for?
Federal Firearms License.
Yeah.
This 7.
This is actually what I had to do when I bought I have a 22 rifle. That's all I have. But to buy a 22 plinker just for target practice and stuff, I actually had to go through. It was a private sale, but I had to go through an FFL, and the person selling it had to transfer it to the store, and then the store did a background check on me, and then I was able to go pick it up from the store. That closes the so-called gun show loophole, which actually is more of a loophole for private arms transfers. And stop me if I'm wrong, Grant, because I guarantee you know more about this.
No, I mean, you're right. That is the so-called feared
right. So gun shows really don't have a lot.
No, gun shows have nothing to do with it at all.
Right. It's mostly about people who want to pass it down to somebody else, or people who want to sell it to their neighbor, or people who want to sell it a private sale. The only time the federal law applies is when you're buying it from a dealer, from a store. And
Correct.
after that, the secondary market is not regulated. You don't need to run background checks or anything. Right. That is the loophole that they're talking about closing.
Yeah, and actually at gun shows, most tables and most dealers there are private retailers. There are very few private sellers of guns at gun shows. So really, the term gun show loophole makes almost no sense.
But they're
still have to do the background check. Just because
they're targeting people. They're targeting people who are selling their guns to each other.
Right. They're
on the secondary market.
Hundreds of gun shows, and there's
right.
mostly retailers. But yeah, I mean, but again, if you make that law, who's going to follow it? I'll tell you right now, if I'm selling a .22 rifle to you, I would probably just give it to you. Like what?
All right. Let me get Matt in here. I got a question for him. Before we talk about radical Islam, let's talk about it as a gun issue. Matt, you know gun stats. You know gun crimes to a degree. What good is it to restrict access for law-abiding American citizens? We just talked about guns. We talked about there's a little difference between an AR-15, the semi-automatic AR-15, and that of a semi-automatic firearm, or a pistol. What good does it do to restrict access to law-abiding American citizens to make it harder for them to get weapons when we know that terrorists and criminals have access to them, whether it's through the legal market or the illegal market? What does that do to reduce these types of crimes, or if anything, or crimes or attacks?
I mean, people are trying to still blame this on the NRA and their defenses. We can't stop terrorists from being hateful, but we can try to stop their means of carrying out this hate. Well, look at France. I mean, they have very strict gun control there, and they didn't stop terrorists there. And if you want to look at the worst terrorist attack on our soul, firearm. So, I mean, so I don't think gun control is the answer. And if you look since 1950 to today, if you look at all mass public shootings, all but 2 happened in gun-free zones. So I think it's more of a gun-free zone problem than anything else. They're safe spaces for criminals, as someone else put it.
I can make it so, I mean, from my own personal argument, you can make the claim that you should make it easier for law-abiding citizens to get weapons. This way, perhaps you'd have more citizens that are armed, and you'd have less occurrences like this. And then people will say, well, you'll have people at bars that are armed, and they'll get into. But well, why don't we let them?
It's already illegal, I believe, to carry or to be a firearm in most states, I believe.
Well, let's say it isn't. Why don't we let the bars decide and the people decide if they want to go into a bar where people are armed? Let them hash it out. And then, maybe I'd rather go out to a restaurant where I know there's good people that are armed, or a movie theater where people are armed. Kevin, we talk about Unbiased America. On Unbiased America, we talk a lot about guns. Is this a gun crime? Is this an isolated incident of a hate crime, or is this larger, broader, radical Islam problem? Was this guy radicalized by ISIS? A lot of people are saying, well, it's a hate crime. He attacked the gay club, but reports are coming out that this guy had been to this club before, and that he himself is gay, and that he lived this bi lifestyle. I mean, perhaps this guy just went there and said, this is a perfect place to kill a ton of people at night. We know that he went to Disneyland or Disney World and looked at downtown Disney. Is this a problem of a radical ideology, or is this a gun problem?
Absolutely, it's radical ideology. If you look at some of the statements of his father has publicly said that homosexuals should be executed or killed, and that it's not an issue for. I mean, he said this obviously before this happened. But I mean, if you just look at, and I'm working on a post right now that's going to take a while because it's pretty in depth, but for the website, about what exactly what the Islamic ideology talks about when it comes to Sharia and.
Let me ask you this, Kevin.
Punishment.
You said his dad said these things. Would you consider his dad a radical Islamic adherent, or would you say that he's just following Islamic law, like what you're getting into? That's kind of what Sharia is, that he may not be radicalized, but that's kind of what his belief system leads to, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
There's 2 different parts to that, and this is what I'm developing for the post. The first is whether or not Islam has radical views, and in that way, there are different interpretations of Islam. Now, you'll get the president saying that ISIS and some of these terrorists are developing a skewed, or they're hijacking the religion. Not really, actually. If you look at some of the tenets of the religion that go further back, then they really do prescribe some pretty bad punishments to people who commit homosexual acts, to people, women are treated horribly. So it is actually a factor of the religion that is built in, certain of these prejudices and certain of these intolerances. But the thing is, a lot of countries like Turkey, for example, don't actually follow it strictly. And Turkey, Turkey actually has some ways in which they follow Sharia, and some in most ways in which they don't. And then there's countries like Sudan that follow it to the letter. And the real thing, what is so-called is radical, is Sharia. Sharia, if you look at Sharia law, I mean, you get your hands chopped off for stealing something. You get stoned to death for engaging in homosexual activity. And that's not an interpretation of the law. That's a literal reading of.
And you have to have 4 witnesses for a woman to say that she was raped.
That's right. And a woman counts as half of a man when it comes to being a witness.
Right. So
and if you break before being married, it's 6 out of marriage, and that gets stoned for that. So there's also that.
These are actual beliefs. These are actual beliefs of the Islamic religion. Now, some countries don't follow them strictly, but that doesn't mean that they are not part of the Islamic religion. And I think that's where you lose people like President Obama, who just are basically living in a world that's not real.
Kevin, I have a question on that. Do you think, and this is my feeling on the matter, is that as horrible as it is to live under those conditions, I feel like the people who do live in them accept them because it's their culture, it's their way of life, it's the norm for them. And I don't know if I would call that radical in the sense that it's their perspective on the world, not even that I agree with it ever. But
that's moral relativism, isn't it?
That social norm could mesh into our
I see what he's saying.
Culture, or that our way of life even. To me, I don't see how that could work. And this is not like I hate them for how they live. They live the way that they live, and I don't care. You know, just don't
bring it here.
Bring it here because I don't want it here, and frankly, I don't want to tolerate it. Like, why would I want to tolerate something like that?
The problem is they have an expansive ideology. Their ideology says it's your duty to spread the tenets of Islam. I mean, their ideology is very towards converting people who aren't part of the Islamic religion, and so a lot of people believe that it's in their duty to convert people who aren't Islamic, and the more radical of these people believe it's their duty, and they've actually been told to by some of their imams and clerics, it's their duty to kill people who engage in this activity. And
I just want to interject here and say that I think it was a Pew Research study that it surveyed Muslims in the United States of America, and 80% rejected violence in the name of Islam. So I mean, there was some that didn't obviously reject it, but I just, for the measure, this is, as it relates to American citizens, so it's not impossible for a Muslim to come here and assimilate into American culture, become American, and still practice their religion. Go ahead, Matt.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
I was going to say, no, we have some of the most moderate world in this country, but I mean, if you look at the UK or even in a lot of areas over Europe, they tend to segregate themselves into so-called no-go zones, which liberals deny that they exist for some reason.
I agree.
But I mean, even in the UK, in the UK, there's more than 50 Sharia courts that operate, and the UK government allows that to happen. So, I mean, it is a real threat.
The melting pot works. The melting pot works.
Right. That's what I was just going to say. I don't really like to call it moderate Muslims. I say they're American Muslims. They have assimilated into American culture. They understand that I have a right to practice whatever religion I like or I want. And like these people at this Pulse nightclub who happen to be homosexual. I mean, Christians may not see it as moral, but they tolerate their lifestyle. We have the most diverse, tolerant nation on the face of the planet. We allow these things to happen, and I think that's what the Islamic world despises about us, is that we're tolerant, we allow these things to occur, and that's why they hate most of the West. That in America we have a civil society, we do respect rights, and that's what's really under assault here. Not just a gay nightclub, not just people at a Christmas party in San Bernardino, or people who show up to work in the World Trade Center. It's kind of broader than that. Would you agree, Grant?
Yeah, I was going to say to the statistic that you pointed out. We are definitely the home to what I would call, on a grander scale, moderate Muslims. Yes, they are American Muslims, but I think that we've gotten far too lax in how we almost open the floodgates to certain parts of the world, particularly in the Middle East. And I think that is where we're seeing this sort of like homegrown terrorism that we saw in San Bernardino, now Orlando, even the Boston Marathon. And that is where I have a problem.
So would you say, as a libertarian, you're okay with a moratorium on the countries that Rand Paul outlined of immigration?
Absolutely.
Okay. That it's not. I mean, now that I think that Trump tempered his. If you saw that speech, I know Kevin did. He kind of tempered his policy on that. Instead of saying all Muslims, it's countries where there's a problem.
I do not like. I think that's a terrible idea. But from the Middle East, yes.
Well, countries where the ideology is pervasive. Yeah.
Because look, if you're libertarian and you recognize the Constitution, that implicitly means you recognize the federal government, which constitutionally has a duty to protect our borders. I mean, that's just how it is. Now, Mexican immigration is a whole other issue, in my personal opinion. But when it comes to people coming from the Middle East, there's absolutely a very identifiable national security risk to that.
So we have to know who's coming here.
You can't just ignore that on the ideological concept of free movement and like free people, because the United States has no duty to them.
Yeah, well, also here's another point. I mean, look, we have people leaving, the Middle East to come to the United States to live as Americans. Why can't we want to protect them too? Perhaps we vetted them and we know they accept the American civil society as their own. They escape that. Why should they be? Why can't we protect them from it too? Why do we import it here where they just left?
See,
how about them?
I think if the argument is going to be about protecting them, and even if you want to say that I don't believe that American foreign policy has entirely created the situation we see now, but even to the extent if you want to say it's our fault, fine, keep them over there, put them in a militarized zone.
If you're talking about refugees, yeah, I mean, I'm talking about
American military assets. Fine.
I'm talking about, for instance, my ex-girlfriend, her father fled Syria, and I mean, he's here, he's an American citizen, he's accepted American culture. He should be protected too from radical Islam.
Absolutely. If you're an American citizen, yes, yeah, you are.
Right. So but when you say American citizen, people automatically assume by default that you mean white heterosexual males, and that somehow that the LGBT community isn't an American citizen, and that if your skin pigmentation, and I mean that you're not an American, and that's crazy to think this.
And when you allow and it's an ideology like that to flourish, this is what happens. I mean that you can't just let them like run ape shit all over the Middle East. This is what would you think would happen if we didn't fight off the Nazis? What do you think they were going to stop?
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, and
you're like, all right, enough.
If we fought the Nazis, we just create more Nazis.
I want to move on to how this got covered in the media, and I'm going to get to Kevin and Matt. I mean, we saw a lot of diversionary tactics. When there was when these attacks happened in Belgium and France, the president came out, said, he acknowledged them as terrorist attacks, and said, look, there's not a whole lot you can do about this. We need to contain ISIS. We can just contain it. We can't. Yeah. We'll never eliminate it. You see, and it was horrible what happened, but what can we do? A terrorist attack of the same exact type happens on our soil. This is a mass shooting. He's reluctant to totally. The FBI has classified it as a hate crime and a terrorist attack. I mean, he's reluctant to call it that, and then he turns his attention to guns. It's fascinating to me. That
I'm pretty sure all shootings are hate crimes.
No, no kidding. I mean, hate is a fleeting feeling, much like love, so on and so forth. Yeah. Ideology sticks around through generations. I mean, this is
the thing is, people have been trying to set debating as if it's if it was caused by homophobia or Islam, as if it's black or white like that. I mean,
right.
Obviously, he could have been homophobic. Where the hell do you think he got those ideas from? I think the Quran's pretty clear about how gays should be treated. So,
Kevin, how do you feel what was the most egregious missteps in the coverage of this through social media and journalism?
CNN.
The TV.
CNN was an absolute abomination, which is depressing because we talked about this earlier. We were hopeful about CNN because of the way they covered the Republican primaries, that maybe they were becoming a more responsible network in terms of their journalistic integrity. They have absolutely shit the bed on this one. They actually, this was Carol Costello on CNN, made the case, pushed the narrative that this was not radical Islamic terrorism. Not just Islam, not just Muslims, but this is not even radical Islam. She basically said this is a homophobe, gun-crazed homophobe who decided to go and kill a bunch of gay people. And that it had nothing to do with Islam, had nothing to do with ideology. She pushed this hard. I mean, and a bunch of other hosts did the same. To their credit, there were a couple of guests on the show, they're analysts for CNN, that rejected it and said, no, this was radical Islam and so forth. But I think the biggest mistake by the media right now is that, think about it, we've talked more about Islam in this last half hour than I've heard in all of the media coverage up to now. I mean, there is no discussion of whether or not this is actually, I mean, people say, okay, it's inspired by ISIS, but they don't talk about what the tenets of Islam are, and whether or not this is actually mainstream or radical. They don't talk about Islam at all.
Let me ask you this, Kevin. Do you think that the left characterizes it as, you know, this homophobic gun nut? This, you know, they're the master of narratives, and if they say this guy's a homophobic gun nut, the first thing most people think is, oh, this is a white guy, this is a white Southern guy, and they're trying to create that image that this is an American culture problem, right? And that this has nothing to do with Islam or people of a different skin pigmentation or people of a different religion. I mean, you know, if this had been a Christian kid with no ties to Christianity, just some kook, it would have been, I mean, you would have heard that this was just this white Christian, this is our society, it just breeds contempt and hate. But if it comes from this radical wing of Islam, don't say that. You know, turn it into this narrative of it's just an American-born, you know, homophobic bigot that just wanted to kill as many gay people as possible. And that's kind of like what I feel the narrative they're trying to push, because it best protects their overall narrative and their ideology.
Yep. And you had, I think, the post of the week on Unbiased America, which I don't know if it was today or yesterday. It was just a couple paragraphs, but you pointed out the comparison between how President Obama reacted to the shootings in Europe versus how he reacted to the shootings over here. And it's the perfect description of how the media is handling it in terms of making this look like it's not anything related to Islam, and that this is actually some problem with guns and weapons, and, you know, making this into something, you know, like I said, this is just a random gun nut homophobe who went in there and killed everybody. There's no discussion of whether or not radical Islam is actually a problem.
Matt, I know you were fired up this week about some of the coverage. What bothered you the most about what you saw and heard?
He's eating.
To me?
Yeah.
Dude, I got garlic bread and chicken parm. I'm not putting anything down.
All right,
do they let you do this on Red Eye, Matt?
What angered me?
Oh, Grant, did you hear the question, Matt?
Yeah.
What was it? What angered me most?
Go ahead, Grant. Did you hear it?
Yeah, I heard it.
Go ahead and then get mad at it.
All right, what most bothered me about the media coverage this week was here we have this act of violence. People begin to jump to conclusions, of course, naturally. And once it's revealed that he pledged allegiance to ISIS just before the shooting, the first thing the president says is, this just goes to show you how easy it is to get like a quote-unquote assault rifle. And to me, if that's the piece of evidence, the most recent piece of evidence that you have when you're addressing the nation of the United States, the first thing you say is we need to restrict rights of American citizens after someone who just pledged allegiance to ISIS murdered 50 people on your own soil.
So you're
That's
saying
the first thing that you say.
He lectures Americans is the first thing he does.
I'm not criticizing him for saying radical Islam or anything like that. You know, he said act of terror, all that good stuff. And whatever, call it radical Islam. If he didn't call it that, he didn't call it that, whatever. You could have ended it there. His closing remarks were, this just goes to show you how easy it is to get an assault rifle in the United States.
So your big problem here is, Grant, your big problem here is
let's take your guns. Come on.
Hold on one sec. Your big problem here is that we just got attacked, obviously a terrorist attack, and he goes out there, and I mean, he did this today or yesterday too. He's lecturing Americans on our gun rights, on our due process rights. And instead of attacking, like, if this, God forbid, I wish he treated radical Islam like he treats Republicans and gun owners. You know what I mean? God, we'd be way better off. I mean, the enemy might actually be frightened. I mean, do you see the same? Go ahead, Grant.
Look, the way I saw it was, my country was attacked by a person who clearly has a self-proclaimed affiliation to someone we're at war with. And the President of the United States looked me in the face and said, This just goes to show you how easy it is to get an assault rifle. Are you kidding me? Like, really? That you couldn't just in your speech when you had like a whole I feel sorry for the victims. This is an act of terror and hate. You
Hey,
couldn't.
Grant, let me ask you a quick question. Do you know that the left is lauding his speech as one of the finest of his presidency?
Oh, come on.
No, I'm serious.
I'm sure they are.
The left, the professional left, as well as people in the social media, are calling it a fantastic speech. The way he stood up to the forces on the right.
He looked like a soulless deadbeat.
Yeah, I thought it was horrible.
His face was blank white. Like, he just didn't have any inspiring words. He was just like, "Give me your guns. Sorry, people died. Give me your guns." That's literally what he said.
It's your fault, Americans, for having these stupid rights in your stupid Constitution.
But some people on the other side of the aisle, they keep voting for individual liberty.
Right. I have a pen and a phone. Go ahead, Matt. I wanted to ask you. I mean, I think you were the one that alerted me to this. Is that you actually saw somebody blame it on Christians? I mean, I think you were the one that said that.
It was
Corey?
And they posted about how I guess there's been 200 plus anti-LGBT bills signed by Christians in the past however many years, which is I guess just as bad as getting shot in the face, apparently.
Right.
What I think pissed me off the most was it was like Planned Parenthood. It was like one of their subchapters. I think it was for black members, and they blamed the shooting as it's not Islam. It's a white supremacist, toxic masculine homoism or something where they just opened up a thesaurus and picked whatever sounded good. Also, I don't know if they realize the irony in having a black-only offshoot of Planned Parenthood, considering what the founder of Planned Parenthood thought should be done to blacks, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, I know. That's a good point. I mean, so we talked to Kevin already. That was the most. Do you think that was perhaps the most outlandish thing, or do you see this as like a chain of events? I mean, I see them. You could always see the left trying to create a narrative that benefits them, and you could see how it trickles out. And in a month or two that they're going to solidify this. They have talking points, and they're going to nail it, and this is going to be a gun thing. And again, here we are talking about guns. It's fascinating to me. Well, I think while the enemies are over there are rejoicing, we're having a debate on how we can take our guns away and make us more vulnerable.
Is it going to backfire? Is it going to backfire on them?
Good question. Is it already backfiring?
Well, it did. Remember in '94, they lost the House because they passed the assault gun ban, and they lost 12 representatives. It pushed them out of the leadership, and it pushed the Republicans in charge. And ever since then, they've been very cautious on how they treat gun control issues until now, it seems. I mean, even after Sandy Hook, I think you had a lot of pushback from Democrats about anything involving gun control. It doesn't seem that way now. Maybe I'm wrong.
You see the tide turning?
I do. I think that they think now's the right time for it.
Sandy Hook was a pushback. Sandy Hook was a big pushback. What do you think about that, Grant? I mean, that wasn't that long ago.
The front page of the New York Daily News today had a Democrat congressman who's a Marine with in his Iraq battle dress saying that people shouldn't have the rifle I deployed with to Iraq on the streets, which they don't. But besides,
don't they use M16s? Aren't they?
The rhetoric
fully automatic
out of the political left, the Democratic Party, has pushed me to Trump.
I mean, listen. Aren't what they're deployed with? Aren't those fully automatic or 3-burst M16s or M4 carbines?
They were M4s up until
M4s. Right.
Civilians can only buy M16s.
Right.
Only buy pre-1986 automatic rifles. There's no more supply of automatic rifles.
And they're only semi-automatic. None are 3-burst or fully automatic.
No. You can buy fully automatic rifles, but they have to be manufactured before 1986.
So they're fully automatic insofar as they're
you have to go through a lot with the ATF.
Antique guns.
Yeah, but the ATF really grinds you out with paperwork and background checks.
Yeah, I mean, I can own a Tommy gun that's an antique. I think there's I think there's like an antique thing. I don't remember the necessary law, but I wanted to talk about now the Supreme Court.
Well, let me just one really quick more.
Go ahead.
Because I've been I just saw this today or just recently. Trump is going to meet with the NRA about the issue of the possibility of actually accepting a new gun restriction on people who are on the no-fly list. Did you guys hear about that? That
Yes.
just happened.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with that because doesn't that violate the Fifth Amendment?
Yes.
You know, shouldn't there be due process before you're
Yes.
of your right to this a Second Amendment right to bear arms? I mean, this is, and it seems like it could be something that could be expanded to the point where almost nobody is allowed to have firearms.
Yes.
You know.
If the
And you know, Kevin Hillary said today, no one who's under investigation by the FBI should be able to own a firearm.
I mean, seriously, it's just going to get worse and worse.
it's akin to civil asset forfeit. Yeah, you've had your property, you've had your rights taken away before you've been convicted of any crime, before you had a fair tribunal. You can't, and let's say that the federal government's vindictive against you, and they say, you know what, just put him on a terror watch list, and then he can't get a weapon.
Here's the problem.
I don't think that's really going to happen, though. I don't.
You don't think so? Because here's the problem.
I
The
do.
American people actually
For a lot of people, that
actually
would
support it.
vote for Trump. I wouldn't vote for Trump. I said earlier the whole gun control rhetoric is pushing me towards Trump, but that I wouldn't vote for him if he supported that.
He could really do himself a lot of good if he stuck to the pro Second Amendment platform because right now the left is jumping over the cliff and they're gambling that the American electorate is going to follow them. If I was Trump, I would just stick to Second Amendment all the way, no exceptions, no regulations, no nothing.
He's a
because
political
right now, the
amateur
fact that he's
and a moron.
meeting with the NRA to discuss the possibility of telling people that they are going to lose their firearm rights it's going to lose him so many votes that he could have easily.
Actually, that's good for Gary Johnson, though. Really, it really is.
Yeah, nothing's good for Gary Johnson.
Just shut up. God, why is he on the show?
All I have to do is
Get rid of Grant.
all I have to do is put on TV the Libertarian Convention, and no one will ever vote Libertarian. So, I mean, that was awful. I've had friends tell me, because I've got them into kind of libertarianism, say, hey, I watched this Libertarian Convention, and like, are you really a libertarian? You know what I mean? They were like, that was laughable. I couldn't believe my eyes. Anyway, I keep picking on libertarians, and then people keep hammering me for it. But no, this is interesting. The Supreme Court. Look, you have Hillary Clinton. If she wins, she's going to. I mean, this is the most anti-gun president we would ever have. Here's this woman. If she wins, who do you think she appoints to the Supreme Court? I mean, somebody that's going to overextend the Commerce Clause and say, hey, look, commerce means that you can regulate gun ownership anywhere, even in your own house. I mean, they've already told you what you can and cannot grow. You know, I can't grow. You know, even if my state law says, hey, I want to grow a couple of pot plants because I need to smoke it because my back hurts, the federal government can come into your home and seize that. So, I mean, where are we really going here? I mean, this is really what the fight is over, not POTUS, but SCOTUS. What do you think, Maddie? I mean, would that lead you, you're in New Jersey, would that lead you to vote for Trump in your state to ensure that you would get some sort of a constitutional originalist on the court?
Yeah, so I mean, I do live in New Jersey, so the way it works if you want to get a gun is you apply for one, and then 6 months later you'll get a rejection. So, I mean, anything that kind of improves gun rights would be a plus for me.
Yeah, didn't Stossel do a show on getting one in New York City, and it took him like.
In New York, yeah, he even had the excuse that he gets threats all the time just because he's in media, and they said that he had risk or something. So it's literally impossible for people there to get it.
And they rejected him at the end. They said, no, you can't get a gun.
And it was after he paid like $400 in fees, and it was after like 6 months. It was something crazy like that.
I just, just people that overreact, all the rhetoric that you have going on when such a horrible thing happens. With 49 people dead, I think there was 53 hospitalized. I just couldn't imagine the slaughter and then the political bantering and positioning and posturing by everybody. I mean, I'm not even talking, with social media, it's not just people in politics. I mean, it's everybody. It's your friends saying stuff, and you're just like, is he really saying this? I can't believe my eyes. I mean, it's brutal to go through your.
Honestly, the day of the shooting, I was drinking by 2 o'clock because I couldn't fucking take the comments anymore. Like, it was a retardation overload. Did you see fucking that Muhammad guy we had on our show? His status on that? Jesus Christ, I was about to tear my fucking hair out.
He tagged me and Grant in a Trump post. Like I support Trump. I'm like, what are you doing here? You said right to travel, so I never said anything like that. I don't know what you.
Yeah.
You know, like, why do I have to support Trump? I like the Constitution and liberty. I don't like Trump. I don't think I agree with him on some things. I think he just spouts off. Like Kevin said, he already dropped the ball on a good political opportunity. But Kevin, I think you're assuming that somehow he's politically savvy. The guy's a blowhard, fathead. He reminds me of Bill O'Reilly. He thinks that he can get up there and say anything, and he doesn't have to take positions or principle stances on anything.
O'Reilly does great with a certain group of people. He does great with, same as Trump.
Yep. No, exactly. I mean, they're two blowhards. I mean, if you watch Bill O'Reilly, the man is egregiously wrong. I mean, overboard wrong at times. And you're just shut up. And he says it. He just says it in a certain way where I want to sock him, but other people are like, yeah, he's right. You know, that sounds good. And the way he says it, I can kind of get into that. You know. And he has this religious following too, and so does Trump, and they love each other. These two nitwits. They're from kind of the same area. Trump's from Queens. Bill O'Reilly's from Levittown. You know what I mean? They're close to each other. I mean, they have the same cadence, and they're both complete idiots. And I watching either one of them makes me want to gouge my eyes out, just like looking at my news feed the day after a tragedy. But yeah, no, you were right. I wanted to bring up the no-fly list, and you were right, Kevin. That's violation of your due process rights. I mean, even if you look at the Privileges and Immunities Clause, you couldn't do it. So there's a couple of ways that the Supreme Court could overturn it. But that's assuming that Hillary Clinton hasn't appointed somebody that's going to just completely eviscerate whatever's left of the Constitution.
And for a minute, I'd like to make the point that on the no-fly list, think about all the times in history when governments have been able to put people on lists at their own whim in which they can restrict people's rights that are within the documents of the countries that they preside. So the U.S. Constitution and everywhere else that this has ever happened. Why is no one making this connection? This is just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to put you on a list, and pretty soon you're not going to be able to say what I think you should be able to say. This is all going to come down to the Supreme Court.
The whole thing is going to come down to the Supreme Court, because if they try to do this, if they try to take away a citizen's Second Amendment rights without due process, it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And guess what? Guess what that's going to depend on?
That's what I mean.
Is going to depend on. I mean, Scalia was the best defender of the Second Amendment. He's gone, and who knows who's? I mean. Who knows if we have Hillary for 4 or 8 years?
Clarence Thomas is also an excellent advocate. Yeah.
You're going to have a couple more, vacancies, and we could end up with a Supreme Court that just eviscerates the Second Amendment.
Yep. No doubt about that.
I was talking to a lot of, and this is kind of on the same Supreme Court issue, is a lot of liberals are saying, we're not coming to take your guns. We just want common sense gun laws. But we also support Australian-style gun laws, which is literally coming to take your guns. I mean, that's what that is.
Wait, common sense gun laws, is that like a living wage? Is that in the same category? Common sense gun law, living wage?
Well, shut up. You don't have common sense. You don't understand.
Yeah, right.
And so they're advocating confiscation, forcible confiscation. Whether they admit it or not, if they like Australian gun laws, that's what they're supporting, whether it's a semi-automatic rifle or not. So my question is, let's say that happens under a Hillary Clinton who can get whatever she wants and can run right through SCOTUS. How many Americans, and let's get a little tinfoil hatish here, how many Americans do you think are just not going to comply? Just say no.
I'll tell you, in Connecticut,
people just said no.
They tried to pass a law in Connecticut essentially requiring people to register weapons they already had. And there was something like a 50%, I don't know what it is now, I'm talking about at the time that I read this story, which was like a year ago. There was something like a 50% non-compliance rate.
There was something very similar in New York as well.
Yeah.
With repercussions, right, Kevin? There are costs to not registering your weapon, right?
How do they know if you don't have? How do they know if you have a weapon?
Yeah. Well, let's just say that you get. Let's just say that if you use it or you're shooting and somebody inspects it and you didn't register it, there would be legal repercussions, and still only 50% reported.
Correct. And here's the thing, though: if you end up with a situation, and this is what people are worried about who are pro-gun rights. If you end up with a situation where every single gun sale involves paperwork and ends up being basically a national registration, then they can enforce whatever laws they want and they will, just like with the IRS, they can hit you with all sorts of fines and fees because you're on record. You're in the paperwork. You're in the database now, and no matter what law they pass, you got to follow it, or they will bankrupt you.
I've been talking to a lot of gun owners in the last week or so, and really over the span of since Australian gun control was ever even remotely spoken of. I think 50% is a conservative number. I think on a national level, you'd be looking at, for lack of a better word, an insurgency of people who just refuse to obey by the law.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Well, think about that. That's Connecticut, one of the most liberal states in the country. If Connecticut is at 50%, imagine what Montana would be at. Imagine what.
I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to follow it. If there comes a day, I wouldn't follow it.
I think Democrats come down to I don't want him to have a gun, but I want my gun. You see what I mean? I think I think when it comes to that, they're going to say no, no, you're not taking my gun. I don't want that guy down the street. You see to have it.
Well,
He's
why
crazy.
is it 45 minutes into every show your mic starts freaking out?
Is it freaking out?
Yep.
All right, I'll fix it.
But think about this scenario where you're going to have all these quote-unquote prison industry liberals who are all against mass incarceration, faced with a scenario in which a good portion of American citizens are going to be committing felonies.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, and I don't think they.
That's what you're walking into in that sort of scenario. And I don't think it's an unrealistic scenario to say that under a Hillary Clinton presidency you could have Australian-style confiscation, is what that is. And I think that's a dangerous place to put our country, especially right now. Very divisive.
I mean, you can't, and also it would violate the Constitution because it'd be an ex post facto law, so you couldn't really do that anyway. And if they went to the Supreme Court, which it probably would right away, they would tell the Supreme Court, hopefully, if they did their duty, would tell you to get lost.
Under a Hillary Clinton presidency.
That's what I mean.
Nominees.
So there's a lot of libertarians out there that
Australian-style gun control.
There's a lot of libertarians that want to vote Gary Johnson. Please.
Dangerous game you're playing right now.
Right. Please. If you care about the Second Amendment, vote for this retard Trump. Please.
Yes.
Think about Ron Swanson right now. What would Ron do?
What would Ron do? I mean,
what would Ron do?
You know, I mean, it's just it's really disheartening to see that no one cares about the truth. Everybody cares about playing some narrative. And I mean, let's talk about the narrative of mass shootings. We've overlooked that. Kevin, let's talk about your post. Let's talk about, is mass shootings a problem? I mean, you looked at it, and like I said, here's Obama talking about the European countries saying, hey, more people die in their bathtubs. You know, we don't have terrorism's not a problem, but when it comes to mass shootings, more people fall out of trees, right? But mass shootings are a huge problem here.
Yeah, you know, I've posted this before, but I went ahead and updated it, and it's the perspective meme that shows a pie chart of all deaths in America, and then 0.04% of all deaths are something like that are murders, and then you zoom into those 0.04 deaths that are murders, and only like 0.002% of those are due to mass shootings. And I really got a lot of hate comments saying that I was being very whatever. I wasn't being very nice to the people who died. And I said, you know what? It's a tragedy. Don't get me wrong. Just like a plane crash is a tragedy, it is a tragedy. Mm-hmm. But does that mean you have to change the Constitution? Mm-hmm. I mean, are we talking about something that's appropriate? Are we talking about something that actually is going to make the situation better or worse? Because, you know, there's a lot of people that use weapons defensively. And I've heard this over and over again. If it saves one life, it's worth it. Well, how about if allowing people to have access to firearms saves one life? Shouldn't we allow that? You know. So
right. How come liberals never apply that logic to abortion?
That's true. I mean, it's there's no logic to either side, frankly. But it's sad to see that people are putting 27 deaths on average over the last 6 years. Because of mass shootings, 27. 3 times more people die falling out of trees.
Is it the definition a problem of mass shootings too, Kevin? Because a lot of people that on your post were oh no, there's 1,200 in the last year.
That's right.
What does it come down to?
That's right. It comes down to your ideology. I mean, the definition I used to say that 27 people died on average per year was 4 deaths per attack. And you know, a lot of people said no, it's 2 deaths, or a lot of people said it was 2 people wounded. It just depends on your ideology what you want to make. But no matter how you categorize it, even if you just look at total murders, it's tiny compared to all the other ways that people die. And I'm not saying that it's not, you know, a tragedy. All I'm saying is you don't go out and rip away everybody's Fifth Amendment right to have due process because, you know, something like this happened. You just don't do it. And the people are irrational. Emotion gets involved, and they become irrational.
Well, you're too logical.
Kevin, 4 victims. That sounds like a Saturday night in Chicago, man. Your number could be a little high.
That's 1 hour on a Saturday night in Chicago.
That's a good night in Chicago. That's when things go right.
I mean, that's just awful what happens over there too. But you know, Black Lives Matter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's another shameful thing of the left. Black Lives Matter. No one does anything about the kids that are being killed on the south side of Chicago. It really, truly is fascinating to me. That I mean, and also, most of those guns being taken illegally. Does this nitwit president get out and say anything about that? What has he done about that? This guy's. I mean, you couldn't be angrier at the guy. He's a crumb. He's no good, and he's an ideologue, and he's a snake oil salesman, is what he is. Donald Trump is the angel Gabriel compared to this guy, and everybody's well, Trump this, Trump that. This guy we have in office now is dangerous. And he's been a danger to this country, to our foreign policy, to liberty, to the Constitution, to the rule of law. He's a horrible human being. I hate him. Sorry, everybody, but it's true. He's not my president. I'll tell you that. I've just personally impeached him. We got to get to winners and losers, which is going to be a tough week for winners and losers. But I mean, you know, I don't know. I don't know if you guys have any before you started, but it was tough for me to do.
My winner is me for getting on Red Eye. My loser is Harambe the gorilla.
What date are you on?
Never forget.
I'm actually going into record tomorrow. It'll air on the Friday episode, which technically Friday's episode airs Saturday because it's a really late night show.
Jesus,
I can't remember if it airs
give us a time.
3 a.m.
Yeah.
God.
Either maybe 3 a.m. I don't know.
What date?
I'll get that whatever it is.
Yeah, what are you 21 or 22 or something?
I don't know.
Yeah. Grant, do you have any winners and losers?
18th.
The 18th of July. The 18th of July. Matt.
No, June. Like I'm going to tape it tomorrow.
Okay, so the 18th of June it airs.
Yeah.
Which is Friday or Saturday?
Days.
It's Friday night, midnight on East Coast time. Yeah, and it's 3 a.m. on West Coast time.
I'm just going to record the next 3 shows because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, shut up, Matt. Nobody likes you anyway. All right, Grant, what are your winners and losers?
All right, my winner of the week is the AR-15 rifle because it's still protected.
Turn your mic on there.
Oh, yeah. So the winner is AR-15. We're still fighting terrorists, and we're still keeping America safe. This is awesome. My loser of the week is the FBI and the federal government because they were investigating a very obvious radicalized terrorist and completely missed the ball. Yet, for some reason, if we trust them with even more power and more control over people's backgrounds, they'll be able to prevent people from getting guns. But, you know, the federal government apparently contracts terrorists with DHS now. They're my loser of the week.
All right, that's a good one. Kevin.
Well, I had the same loser, so I'll change it. My loser of the week, after thinking about it during the show, is the NRA. The fact that they're actually talking openly about supporting a ban for people who are on the no-fly list is I can't believe that an organization that's supposedly the last line of defense on the Second Amendment would actually talk about supporting that. Let's hope that's not true. The winner of the week, I got a unusual winner this week. I was reading how we talk about the show beforehand on our website, and we publicize it. And Frank Rothstein said he was going to watch the show. So that is my winner of the week, Frank. If you actually watch the show, good for you, buddy. You were the most liberal idiot I've ever known, but the fact that you watch the show at least gives me hope for the future.
We got to have him on sometime.
I know, we do.
Yeah, your winner and losers were good. My loser was the same as Grant's, so I suppose I'll change mine too. But The winners of the week would have to be like Being Classically Liberal, We Are Capitalists, and Unbiased America, because I think they do actually the most honest work. If you saw Corey's little piece today on the Australian gun laws, was that Corey? Yeah, he did a really good job on that.
Is your loser the modern libertarian?
What's that? Oh yeah, and the modern libertarian. Yeah,
Is
no.
your loser the modern?
My loser is not the site itself, which is really good. My loser of the week is the person that runs that site. His name's Grant Phillips, and this guy just can't end his love affair with his weaponry.
I know. Yeah, I spoon him, I kiss him. It gets really weird. It's
kind of weird. I like, hey, you got a girlfriend? He's always like, yeah, she's right here, and I hear, ch-ch. It's
my girlfriend lost shield, know what I mean?
I promised our viewers that Grant's house would be raided by the ATF live on our show tonight. But it's going to happen eventually, if not tonight.
Can you show us the serial number on camera too?
Yeah, I'm sure that's been scratched out long ago.
Yeah, I know. Oh yeah, sure. Can you also tell us? I mean, this is another thing I've seen all week: the difference between a magazine and a clip. Can you please, for the love of God?
This is a magazine, 30-round magazine for 5.56. Goes in here. Right, works like that. A clip is actually used in older guns. They don't put it in modern rifles anymore. It's the last time it was used.
M1 Garand.
Garand, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, just like a metal clip that holds 5-10 rounds.
You clip it into the thing and then you put it into the gun.
If anyone's ever played Call of Duty World at War, you have the M1 Garand and you run out of ammo, it goes bing. That's the clip.
Okay, thank you for that, and I just want to tell everybody again about unbiasedamerica.com. Go there. You can see our mass shooting post, or Kevin's mass shooting post, which is done really, really well. You can see things done by Matt Palumbo. He's the guy sitting there all the way to the right that was eating dinner during the show, and he's kind of got that gangsta lean, Well, what did you have?
Chicken parm and garlic bread.
All right, thanks for telling us that. And everybody, when do we have Bob Murphy on, Kevin? That's the 29th, right?
Yeah, 28th, 29th, around then.
We have Bob Murphy on in the coming weeks. I did a show with Adam Friedman that you can find on YouTube talking about the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship, jurisprudence, and the Obergefell decision, and that's on YouTube, and it's also on Unbiased America. Thank you for tuning in, and we will definitely see you next week. Have a good night.